Hello and welcome to our webinar, What Puts Buyers Off Buying Your Business? I'm Kevin Harrington from Exit Factor in the UK. If you want to ask a question during this webinar, please DM me on LinkedIn. So buyers want confidence, they want clarity, and they want to know the business can stand up to scrutiny before they commit. In this webinar, we'll look at the hidden reasons buyers walk away and what you can do to make your business far more attractive. At the end of the presentation, I'll deal with any questions that have come up from messages that you send me through DM. So my name's Kevin Harrington on LinkedIn. Let's get started. Let me hand over to my business partner, Daryl Bates-Brownsword. Daryl.
Thanks, Kevin, and welcome, everyone. The title of today's webinar is deliberately, emotive for a lot of business owners. Yeah, the title is deliberately blunt. Why no one wants to buy your business. It's a big issue out there, and it affects more business owners than we care to admit. 4 out of 5 business owners that want to try and exit their business fail to get a deal. They fail to get a successful transfer and ownership of their business, and they end up having to close the doors. That's not acceptable for us, and we're on a mission to help business owners make sure they get the exit, they get to maximize the valuation of the business, make sure the business is actually sellable in the first place, and then get an exit on your terms. So let's dig in and have a look around what we can do, about that. So most owners think their business is more attractive than a buyer thinks it is. And today's about closing that gap before a buyer, lender, or unexpected event exposes that. The house of cards on the slide you see there, it's deliberate. A business can look impressive from the outside, yet still depend on a few critical cards remaining in place. And that's the risk that buyers are seeing, what buyers are looking at when they start to evaluate your business. So what's today's agenda? Here's a bit of an outline. Here's the topics. The webinar is broken up into 5 key topics. These are the ideas that I want to go through and just share some thoughts with you. So we start with why would people not want to buy your business? Then we'll explore what are the causes, how does this affect your sellability, and what are your exit options, and then what you can do about it. You know, there's no point in talking about all the issues and not offering some thoughts and ideas on what you can do about it. And then importantly, we'll give you some thoughts on how to get started if you want to make the transition and have some certainty and confidence that your business is going to be one of the ones that is actually sellable. And so let's get stuck in, shall we? So what would make a buyer walk away after they've had a look at your business? You've put your business on the market. You've done some great work with a corporate finance professional or a broker or an M&A consultant, and they've stimulated some interest in your business. And then someone comes along, a buyer comes along, and they lift the hood, so to speak. They start to have a look at your business, and they'll want to have a look at all of the information and the details, what's known as due diligence. And what would make them walk away once they've started to have a look at the behind the house of cards? So with this question, I want to ask you to put yourself in the shoes of the buyer of your business, of an acquirer. What would make, if you were to have a look at your business, would you buy it? Would you run away? So we're looking to have a look at what the reasons are around why a buyer would want to walk away. Now, it's important to know, a buyer's not judging your efforts or intentions. They're just deciding whether future earnings will survive a change of ownership. So if it were your own money at risk, would you buy this business? Would you be able to buy the business and get the terms that you would want to buy the business on? You know, from a buyer's perspective, not the seller's perspective. We're always talking about the seller getting the terms that they want, you, the business owner. But today, this question, I want you to stand in the shoes of the buyer and go, if you were looking over the fence, looking at your business, Would you buy it? And most business owners answer that question from a perspective of pride and rightly so, what you've built over many years. But we want to take the emotion out of it, because the business buyer, the brokers out there, the PEs, they're just looking at the results. They're looking for evidence, and that word evidence and confidence is going to come up a few more times during our conversation today. So buyers are looking at your business from a perception of risk. They're saying, what are the chances? What's the likelihood of the current revenue pattern, the current profit pattern, growth pattern that is, continuing once there's a transfer in ownership? They're generally not interested in buying businesses that are in plateau, that have leveled out in their revenue for the last few years, because that is a higher risk business. So imagine removing yourself for 6 months with no phone calls, no rescue missions. The gaps that appear are close to the risk that the buyers will investigate. So if you took yourself out of your business for 6 months and you didn't touch it, what would happen? How would the staff respond? How would the customers respond? How would your suppliers respond? What would happen to the business? And that's measured, so all of the behaviors of what people would do, that's measured in terms of, that shows up in your financial accounts. So what would happen to your business? So as an owner of a business, you tend to see years of sacrifice. You see the customer goodwill, the customer relationships that you've built up, and you see the potential in your business. Business owners are optimists. They're always seeing that next year will be better. We're going to implement this strategy, this plan, this idea, this concept next year. You're optimists, and I get it. That's what makes SMEs prosperous and successful, and it's what gets them going. Buyers are looking for transferability. They're looking for evidence. They're assessing the risk. And it's important to note that it's the buyer who determines the value of the business, not you, the owner. You've got an idea of what the business is worth, but as in any market, a buyer will determine the value. The seller can set the price, but the buyer will determine if they want to pay that price, and they'll determine if that price is worth value. And that's, in the retail market, when you're selling a business, it's going to be a negotiated price. And if you set the price too high, if you think the business is worth far more than the buyer does, then they'll just simply walk away. The difference in perspective, this difference explains why owners and buyers can look at the same business and reach totally different conclusions. And the thing to remember is that ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the buyer who's going to submit an offer for your business, and their view is what's going to determine if the deal is going to complete or not. So your job is to ensure that your business is minimized all of the risks, and the friction of transferability is as low as possible. Much like dealing with clients and customers, you want to remove the friction of doing business with you as much as possible. And in any transaction or customer engagement, the more you remove the friction, the more you make it easier to do business with you, the easier it is to keep and maintain and retain clients. When it comes to preparing your business for exit, it's important to start thinking, actually, my business is now the product. So if someone's going to buy this product, how do I remove the friction of buying this product? And what problem does it solve for the buyer? If they buy my business, what's the problem it solves for them? And if you can communicate in the language of solving the problem and identifying the problem and solving it, where your business is the solution, then your likelihood to get a deal once the friction's removed. So I'm just going to try a little experiment here. Kevin, we've flagged earlier to DM you if they've got any questions, but I'm just going to try something while we're live and just have a little bit of an experiment and a bit of fun here. If you're listening now, and just ping Kevin a DM if you have got any reason of what do you think are the big objections that people, business buyers, walk away from deals or walk away from some submitting offers or bailing out during completion? What do you think the reasons are? As a clue, we've come up with 6 main headings. Right, people being shy, Kevin, not hearing much.
Hold on. One's just come in. Let's get this. Someone's written here, no agreements in place with suppliers or clients. That's one. And another one's here as well. It says the owner knows it all and is the center of the business. Yeah. We'll keep moving on, just because it's a bit cumbersome. Here's me banging on about removing friction of doing business, and there's a whole lot of friction in trying to get going with the DMs on LinkedIn. So I'll put that out there as an example of what not to do. So there's a bit of overlap here. There's the owner dependence is the first one, and that was an example that came up. Too much customer concentration. All of these 6 issues overlap. Weak management drives owner dependence. Poor numbers hide inconsistent cash. Concentrated customers weaken the growth story. And remember, I said earlier that we want a growth story. If the business has plateaued, it's an unattractive business to buy, because the buyers are going, what's going on? What's stagnant? Why is the business plateaued and peaked out? And so the problems are rarely isolated problems. They tend to reinforce one another. They're all overlapping, creating a bigger impression of risk than any single weakness would suggest rather. So there's the 6: owner dependence, customer concentration, weak management, unreliable numbers, inconsistent cash, and no growth story. So we've got a tool that we use. It's called the Business Sellability Score. It's a free tool. It's available online, and I'll share a QR code that you can use to access this towards the end of our video today. But we've analyzed all of the hundreds of results that we've got in of business owners completing the Business Sellability Score, and the results came in that 54% was the average score of how sellable businesses are, from the people who completed the score, obviously. Now, that's not a business. If you've got a business sellability score of 54%, that's not a business that buyers are fighting over. It suggests that there's meaningful risk in the business, and therefore you might get an offer, but it's going to be a lower and a more conditional offer. So this is just the feedback that we've got from the market and the people that we've been talking to of how sellable their business is. So hopefully it's a little bit of a check-in of, business owners think that their business, often think that your business is presentable and you value. We talked earlier about how business owners have a view of the value of their business, and it's often higher than what buyers think. But here's a check-in. On the whole, there's only 54% are sellable. So an average score can hide individual strengths. So this is not to say that everything's 54% in the business, but the whole score was 54%. It also shows how much work is actually required before a business is genuinely attractive to be acquired. So a buyer's unlikely to pay a premium. Well, they're just not going to pay a premium, let's face it, for a business that's only 54% business sellability score. And the issue, the risk is that they're seeing is uncertainty. Buyers can understand a price and they can understand and price a known weakness in the business. So if we're up front and go, here's what the issues are in our business, a buyer can price that in. But when there are things that are hidden, and we try and cover them all up, well, that's when buyers become cautious and they can't see what's going to happen after the completion, so they'll just walk away. Now, it's worth remembering that due diligence
people who are buying businesses are typically bought more than one business, and they're using professionals to help them with the acquisition. So they know what they're doing. They know what they're looking for. They're not first timers. So due diligence will uncover anything that's been hid, trying to be covered up. And that'll kill a deal quick as you like. So uncertainty makes it difficult to calculate the downside. So buyers are looking to protect themselves through price or conditions or withdrawal from a deal. And the more questions due diligence creates, the less confidence there is. And that's why buyers are walking away. And as I said, known problems can be priced. Known customer concentration, it can be modeled. Unclear numbers or undocumented processes can't be modeled. Unknowns become a larger discount or a reason to stop the process altogether. And this is why an honest diagnosis is more valuable than trying to present a flawless picture. If you present your business for what it is and don't try and cover things up, you're more likely to get a deal because the buyer can factor that in. A buyer can work with weaknesses that are visible and being managed. Now, the move from symptoms to causes, we want to understand what's going on and to why is it happening. So the objection is rarely the whole problem. We look beneath it. Let's have a look beneath, and what shows up is often owner dependence, concentration, and a lack of monitoring and recording and reporting of your business. In other words, a lack of evidence as to how your business is performing, because too many SMEs are running on gut feel. So the next question is not simply what buyers dislike, but why the weaknesses exist. Most of them begin a long time. The root cause, if you like, of these weaknesses are well embedded into the business, and they've been there for many years and for a long time before the business owner decides to sell. And so that's why it's so hard to resolve them, and it takes time. So owner dependence, that's the biggest one that we see in businesses under 30 mil in revenue, typically. And this, so if they're still owner dependent at 30 mil, it means they've been owner dependent for many, many years if the business has got to this stage. So it normally sits in decisions, relationships, and knowledge. All of these reside in the owner's head. If these remain attached to the owner, the buyer can't see where the value transfer. If all the value is in the owner's head, it can't be transferred. So if the owner's holding it all together, much like this owner is here, with you've got his hand and finger on the pulse of everything, it can feel efficient because decisions happen quickly. But to a buyer, it means that the capability has not been transferred to the business itself. So all the knowledge is in the owner's head. It leaves with the owner. That's a weak and low value business. So to the owner dependence feels operationally, it feels like the team will look capable, but important decisions and customer reassurance and problem solving still flow back to the owner to be completed or approved even. So a useful test for you, a useful test is to count how many important matters still require your judgment or are based on your relationships, and each one is a piece of value that's going to leave when you leave the business. So the more involved you are in the business, the less it's worth at the end of the day. And you've probably or possibly heard me talking about this in the past, where I go, we've got a number of succession or exit strategies before you fully exit your business. You've got to exit yourself off the tools and enter into a management role, exit a management role and into the CEO type of role. Then you've got to exit the CEO type of role onto a board type of role. And as the chairman of the board or the chairperson of the board, and then you've got to exit the board to be a shareholder only. And then you can exit your shares or your equity in the business. So there's about 5 layers there of exits to fully exit your business. And that can make that transition more comfortable and piecemeal, and you can project management. Some of those things can all happen sequentially at the same time. And some of them can happen, in series or in parallel, one at a time or all at the same time. So concentration means too much value sits in too few places. One major customer, one key employee, one essential supplier, they can all threaten future earnings. It creates an unstable business, and there's just too many fragile one link holding it all together. Concentration is dangerous because one event can change the forecast overnight. Buyers will test both the likelihood of that loss and whether the business could recover from it. So just be aware of that. Like, buyers know exactly what they're doing. They know where all the pain points are. They know how to press where it hurts, and it'll be agonizing when they do that. It will not be a comfortable experience. So businesses that perform better are the ones that can prove that things will keep on going. They have reliable management accounts. They have documented processes. They have contracts and a track record that will survive the scrutiny. Buyers are looking for confidence that it's not a house of cards, as we touched on earlier. And if you just had one strong year, that's not evidence. Buyers are looking for more than just one strong year. Buyers want a consistent pattern and evidence that explains how the result was achieved. One good year could be good luck, but buyers want to see that your system, your process, your team have generated that result through planning and not good luck. Okay, so what we're going to do now is start to explore let's connect the operating weaknesses to the commercial consequences. Let's explain that the risks, how that risk affects the demand, the valuation, the deal structure, and how that risk affects the owner's ability to leave on their terms or have a process that's drawn out over a number of years. We want to move from the operational weaknesses to the transactional reality. The same risks that create the stress today later appear as discounts and conditions and delayed payments when you do complete a deal. So they're all the things we want to eliminate. So the risk in the business changes more than just the multiple. If you've got a high risk, you get a low multiple. It changes the structure of the deal also. High risk changes the structure of the deal. The apparent price may start high while the cash is deferred and the owner remains trapped in an earnout. We don't want that. An exit on your terms means not having to work an earnout. The owner carries the risk before a sale, but a weak sellability allows the buyer to push back most of that risk back onto you after the sale and after completion, which means you carried the risk all the way through owning and operating the business. You sell the business and you're still carrying the risk because the earnout, the buyers now own the business and they can change the rules. They can move the goalposts. And that's the reason that so many earnouts are just not completed, and sellers can only rely on the cash you get at the completion of the deal. Anything after that is just bonus. The headline price is not the deal. Here's one that I started to touch on earlier. Owners celebrate the headline price. Hey, I sold my business for 5 mil, 2 mil, 1 mil, 50 mil, whatever the number is. We celebrate the headline price. Why? Because that's like the goal. It's the achievement. The better question is how much cash arrives at completion, what conditions remain, and how long the owner's got to stay involved. 5 million offer is not worth 5 million if much of it is uncertain, deferred, or dependent on future performance. You want to have a look at your offers and compare the terms of those offers of what is the better deal for you. Again, removing the risk will get you better terms. At one extreme, you won't get any offers. There is no offer. Buyer says there's too much risk or cannot understand how the business continues without the seller. Doesn't always mean the business is worthless, but it's just too risky for a buyer. More commonly, you'll get a conditional offer. The buyer offers some protection rather than walking away. The protection appears, this is the earnout that we're talking about, or deferred payments or warranties or continued owner involvement. Conditional offer can preserve the headline, but it reduces the certainty. And in effect, the owner is being asked to prove the value after handing over control. Still a high risk. It's still a high risk for you. Ideally, you want to get a competitive offer where you've got a number of people. It's the strongest outcome when you've got more than one buyer who can trust the evidence that you've presented, and competition improves the value and terms of your deal, because the business looks transferable and dependable, and it's attractive to more people, and more people want to acquire your business. Competition changes the balance of power. It puts you in power. When several buyers want the same dependable asset, the seller has more influence over price, conditions, and timetable. So, how do you build a business that buyers want? Let's turn the conversation from diagnosis to action. The business is easy to understand, easier to transfer, and easier to trust. That's where we want to get to. Let's make the business easy to understand. The solution's not about having perfection. It's let's make the business let's get clear numbers, clear roles, clear reporting, remove any avoidable uncertainty. A buyer wants to be able to see clearly how the business makes money, where the performance comes from, and who is accountable. Confusion creates suspicion, even when the underlying business is sound. And we want to make it easy to transfer. So this is where we often hear about a boring business. A boring business is easy to transfer. Systems, leadership, delivery, customer relationships, and decisions all continue without the owner. That's what we're looking for here. Transferability means the buyer acquires a working organization, not a job that the seller used to perform. Let's make it easy to trust. Demonstrate that the performance is repeatable over time. Evidence is what we're looking for. Evidence is what converts an improvement into buyer confidence. So how to get evidence is consistency. We want a consistent, repeatable, and reliable business. We want consistency between the story, the numbers, and what actually happens in practice. Any small contradictions that occur during due diligence will open up and make the buyer want to question and dig in more. So buyers, they're looking for reliable numbers. They're looking for repeatable delivery, leadership depth, a sensible spread of customers, credible governance, and a believable route to future growth. All the things that they're looking for when they're acquiring a business. And remember, they've got a lot of businesses. They've got a lot of choice to choose from. So you really want to put the effort in to make sure your business stands out from the crowd. Put these 6 things in place. If you've got these, it's what gives a buyer confidence that the business is going to continue to grow after completion. So where are we? So the business, this is the desired end state, if you like. The business works and your role, you in the business, is optional. The best way to demonstrate this is when you're in a chair style of role. Business works, customers are served, decisions are made, and the owner has choices. We want exit choices. Exit preparation should create the freedom for you long before the sale. And it's important that evidence beats promises. So many business owners make promises. They say, there's so much potential in my business. Here's what's going to happen next year. We've just implemented this strategy. Here's what it's going to give for you. Buyers are looking for evidence. They don't want promises. Premium valuations are created when the evidence is there, when it exists. A buyer's not going to pay a premium for a process that was just introduced last month. And something worth being aware of is that it takes months to implement these new ideas, months to implement changes to your business. Demonstrate that they work takes years. Gaining the evidence that will get you that premium valuation takes years because you want 1 or 2 or ideally 3 years of results. Preparation at the point of sale is not going to create that. And that's why it's too late to get a premium valuation if you're going to do all of your preparation 6 months before you want to exit the business. So what do we do? We've got a methodology, and we've done other webinars that go through this methodology. But I just wanted to give you the background today that the whole reason that this methodology exists is to address basically the previous 25 minutes of our conversation today. It's a structured, repeatable, reliable process that gets proven results time and time again. Let's value the business. Let's just see what the starting point is. Let's then work on the profit side. Let's work on the numbers and improve your profitability to make sure that you are operating at best practice profitability and you're not spending money unnecessarily. You haven't got unnecessary costs or unreasonable high costs. That'll then give you some extra profit, which will allow you to start documenting the business. You can record and systemize the business. You can invest in systems. It'll give you the headspace. The systems will then eliminate owner dependence. Once you've recorded the business, you've got a record of the business, of how the business works, you'll have eliminated owner dependence. That then gives you a whole lot of free time to work on the business, as Michael Gerber says it in the E-Myth. If you're going to work on the business, you can work on the thing you get you out of the operations, out of the day-to-day. It gives you that headspace to build structure, leadership teams, and transform the business and build those intangible assets. That's what's going to get you the premium valuation. And then you need to prepare for exit. You've got options then. You get to exit on your terms. So where should you start? If you're sitting there and you're thinking, hey, some of this resonates with me. Some of these issues are in my business. I've been feeling that. I've been thinking that, but I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do differently. Let's just do one thing. You're not going to fix everything overnight. I would start with, let's just do some light diagnosis. Start by not worrying about the value. You don't just start with value and getting a valuation. Start by identifying where the value is in your business, not a valuation. Begin with the buyer risk. Find out the weaknesses in your business. Get a third party to have a look over the desk of your business of where a buyer sees risk and what you can do about it. So my encouragement to you is have a look at the business sellability score. If this is resonating with you, scan the QR code. There's a couple of clicks that you have to go through because I've just got the bit.ly code there. I've tested it, but it will take you through to the business sellability score. There's no cost to the sellability score. We'll share a report with you and we'll analyze the results with you and take you through. There's no obligation there, but it's a starting point for you. If you're starting to think, hey, what do I have to do for my business? Where are the risks? Would a buyer walk away from my business? Or would they run to my business? Will I get a competitive result, like a number of people bidding and wanting to buy my business? That's what I wanted to cover today, Kevin. I'll check in with you, see if there's any questions, but don't wait too long. If you're thinking that you want to exit your business, you want to exit on your terms and get good terms and get buyers fighting over your business, you need to start today. You need to be thinking years ahead. And why would you do it years ahead? There's an added benefit of when you've got your business exit ready and you're prepared, you have a much better business to run in the meantime. You'll get more time back. You'll have a higher performing business. You'll have more profit in your business. Okay, and you'll have freedom and less stress.
Just got one, Daryl, which I'll pass over to you.
And you're the winner.
It's Adam,
okay, Kevin,
who has asked, what industries do we specialize in helping?
Really interesting question, Adam. Thanks for that. The thing is, what we're teaching, hopefully it came across that all of the things. I'm really into your question, Adam. Thanks for that. We don't focus on the thing is, what we're teaching, hopefully it came across that all of the things that we're sharing apply to all industries. So we don't focus on any industries specifically. This is management strategy that applies to all businesses. What I think is important is if you're looking for industry expertise is when it comes to actually finding someone to sell your business for you. You need a corporate finance partner or an M&A consultant with lots of contacts, potential buyers and experience in your industry so they know who the people are and they'll help you transfer your business. In terms of this preparation side, we work across all industries.
It's worth
We're
probably
going to help you build
highlighting
the
that Exit Factor
tangible
in
assets
total now
which
has
apply
dealt with
to all
65
businesses.
different industry sectors. So while it is an important question to ask, actually across Exit Factor, we've got quite a fair bit of different experience. But thank you for that, Daryl. And I think the key message out of that from me listening to what you were saying, Daryl, is that the journey to exiting your business starts now. And if you want to follow up with us on any of the topics covered today, please direct message Daryl or myself through LinkedIn. Alternatively, you can email me at kevin.harrington@exitfacts.co.uk. You can use the QR code on screen for the business sellability score. And at the end of that, you can have details on how to get in touch with us direct there as well. So thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to talking with you or you joining us on a future webinar. Thank you very much.